Hello and welcome to Dreary Middle Column, the podcast. This is the start of season 3, our first episode. You got the little Hunter x Hunter episode as the season 2 finale. So if you haven't checked that out, check that out now. But for our first episode of season 3, both of us have watched a little movie in the cinema, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you could join me out here in the foyer of the cinema. We've literally just walked out. It's real.
Yeah.
Those are real people you hear behind us.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah.
stop throwing popcorn around, guys.
Ah,
God.
come on, guys.
Jokesters, pranksters.
See, this is why streaming services have become a good alternative to cinemas.
Yeah, especially HBO Max, which this film is available on. And I know the director loves that service.
So for some, we both watched The Many Saints of Newark, and for some backstory, we're both very big Sopranos fans.
Mm-hmm.
We both love the show.
I think it is fair to say it might be maybe my favourite drama.
It's definitely my favourite drama of all time. There's just something about it which just hasn't been matched by other dramas. It's so crazy how unique The Sopranos is, and I can kind of understand why people still go back to it to this day.
Yeah, and it's not even it's one of the rare shows where people just kind of continually watch it. They finish it and they start again. There's this really weird community that's sprung up online of people who just they know the show inside and out, but they'll still watch it. I'm not quite at that stage yet, but it's definitely, I think it's unique in the way that it kind of changed the face of American drama. Honestly, it's such a good show, and it kind of came out of nowhere as well. It's not it built up to it. It's just kind of here's the Sopranos. Anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. There wasn't many TV shows like The Sopranos before The Sopranos. It kind of did pave the way for what you could argue the golden era of television that we're arguably in. That's obviously a statement up for debate, but that's what a lot of people think anyway.
But anyway, let's why don't we talk about the film that we've just seen in real life?
Let's be upfront. There are going to be spoilers in this.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way we can talk about this movie without spoiling it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't know each other's opinions really, because we haven't talked much about the film off camera. So and as my co-host did bring up, we just left the cinema, so it's still fresh in our minds.
Yeah.
So let's give a little spoiler warning. I don't know if we can't put a skip here to avoid spoilers because
it would be the very end. It would just be us saying bye.
Okay, let's start with a spoiler-free section. That's going to be very short. Did you enjoy The Many Saints of Newark as a Sopranos fan?
Why, thank you very much for asking. Yes, I did. Did you enjoy The Many Saints of Newark as a Sopranos fan?
Yeah, I thought it was great. There's stuff I loved about it. There's stuff that I didn't quite love about it. But
I think if you have either seen The Sopranos or you're on the fence about seeing The Sopranos, I think this is a good film to go into because it has a lot of the same cues that the show does. It has a very similar style. A lot of the humor translates over from the show as well, which I found a bit strange, but I appreciate it definitely. So if you like the style of The Sopranos, or you're thinking of getting into The Sopranos, I think it's a good place to start. There is one massive spoiler in the film for what happens in the show, but unless you kind of know what you're looking for, you might not notice it first time round.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can both definitely say that this is a film that you should watch, honestly.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's about as much we can say without spoiling it, because it's hard, because it ties into the show way too well. So it's kind of just a case of like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Either we put out a 5-minute podcast on Many Saints of Newark, or we talk about an hour for it and spoil the hell out of the movie. So really, if you're thinking of seeing this film, you might want to stop watching here if you haven't seen it already, or if you don't care about spoilers. If you don't care about spoilers, keep watching. I don't care.
Okay, are they gone?
Yes, I think they are. So,
okay,
Christopher's dead.
Loses it. What? That's what you got out this film?
let's. I don't know if I want to scene by scene this, but I do want to start with the opening scene. Why, as a criticism, why did it start on Christopher Moltisanti, one of the main characters of The Sopranos, narrating the film?
Well, okay, I will say this. The narration is so infrequent. Like, he pops up, I think, 3 times in the film as a whole. Once at the beginning, once to introduce Sticky Moltisanti, and then once at the very end. Like, I'm not really sure what the motivation behind that choice was, but I think it is pretty much my only complaint with the film. Like, it's the only major complaint I have with the film.
Yeah.
And it's such a small part of the film that I'm just like, I could take or leave it.
Yeah, because all it does is just well, here's a spoiler for the show. It's like, alright, well then why did you put it in? It just seems really weird. Like, I don't mind Christopher being the narrator, but like when he's talking about the fact that pretty irrelevant stuff to the movie too. Because he's just
like, who's the guy who choked me? I'm like, yeah?
Yeah. And he's like, he killed me. He didn't leave my kid or my wife any money. He gave him like the pocket change. It's like, okay, cool, but this isn't about you, Christopher. It's about your dad.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's in character for Christopher to make everything about himself.
Yeah, because there are points of the film where I would have appreciated a narration. You know, like, what's it called? Like Goodfellas style, where he's like, it's been 4 years since Johnny Soprano's been in prison, and now he's been released. No, there's no narration there. It's just Junior being like, 4 years in the can, eh?
Yeah, no, like, it's very weird, but I mean, besides that one big negative I had with the film, I pretty much loved the rest of it. Like, the casting was pretty spot on, like, fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like that was something that I noticed straight away. It was like everyone who was cast was perfect for the role, and those who weren't perfect were pretty damn good. Like it was. I think I pointed out person who plays Janice looks like Ida, who plays her in
no, it's proper.
The show.
It's scarily like too similar. Like, I don't know if they did the same thing with like Gandolfini, where they just got the child, but it's really scary how similar they look.
Yeah, I did appreciate that.
The casting must have taken quite a while to get right, considering not even just like every actor felt like they were doing spot on impressions of the Sopranos counterparts.
Yeah.
Like,
and like, I know people have said it, but Michael Gandolfini was a very risky like person to cast in that role, and I think he did it perfectly.
Yeah, like Michael Gandolfini is one of the best casting in this film. Played the role proper good, but it's interesting that they made quite the big deal about Gandolfini's involvement with this film, just considering how little Tony Soprano is actually in the movie, which is a shame because some of the best scenes in the film.
I'm not too bothered by that because the film was always pitched as it's more about Christopher's side of the family than Tony's, so I was fine with that. I think it was just more of it might even have just been why don't we test the waters with this character without like going fully into it, so now they know people like Michael Gandolfini, then maybe they might decide to invest in it later, come back and do another, what was Tony doing in the 80s or something.
Well, I hope this convinces Michael Gandolfini to dip his toes more in like acting as a career, because he's got a talent for it.
Definitely.
I don't know if he's gonna be limited because he's doing an impression of his dad, but like
Well,
we'll see.
well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's an impression of his dad, because it's very clearly Tony. Definitely has the same mannerisms, but it's not a one-for-one. Like, it's not a James Gandolfini impression. It is very clearly his own character.
Sure. Well, good casting for, Gandolfini was great casting. It was such like no shit casting that it's happy. Like he looks dead on, like just a young Tony Soprano.
And this is kind of like his first big role, I want to say. Like, I had to look through some of the films he's done before, and he hasn't really had. He's been in 2 big films, but not had huge roles in them. And I think this is like his first proper like big role.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, whoever I don't know who played Junior, but that was dead on. Like mannerisms and the way he speaks was so good.
No, I still think that the Junior from the flashback scenes in The Sopranos is a better looking Junior.
Yeah,
but
no,
this is
for
definitely
sure.
like a better acted Junior.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think if you just get appearance, that Sopranos, like, that fits. Also, his old look totally fits, like, the whole, like, from the original show, totally fits, like, the insult when they're like, oh, look, Mr. Magoo. Like, when I think of, like, a young Mr. Magoo, I think of, like, his original actor from The Sopranos that played his young counterpart. But yeah, no, the mannerisms and the way he speaks in this movie is borderline, like, mwah, like, as good as the original actor. Like, it's
perfect.
Yeah. And they probably, it's you never know what they're going to do with the future of this series, but they've got a good cast here if they decide to continue it. How did you feel about Johnny Boy's casting, Tony's dad?
I think because I was so used to that original, the way he was portrayed, because they kind of go, they show a scene that's similar to one that they showed in The Sopranos, and I don't know, this new Johnny Boy seems way more aggressive than the old one, but
yeah,
maybe that was intentional. Maybe because you could argue that the therapy scenes in The Sopranos, he was romanticizing it a little bit, and this is how it actually was. I could see that being David Chase's reason for it, but I don't know, he seems way more aggressive in this than he did in The Sopranos.
For sure. It is. I would still say it's pretty good casting. I like the scene that is referenced to. I want to say Sopranos home movies, the season 7 episode where they all go. Tony and Bobby go to that little holiday thing for Tony's birthday, and ends up with Bobby beating the shit out of Tony.
Yeah.
Janice tells a story about when their dad shot a hole through the mother's hair, and that's a scene that's shown in the Many Saints of Newark, which I thought was really funny.
I completely forgot that was referenced in the show. I thought that was just something in the film.
Yeah, remember Tony gets super upset that Janice tells the story. He's like, it makes us look like a dysfunctional family.
Yeah, something like that.
I would say, though, Johnny Boy doesn't really get enough scenes to shine besides that scene. So,
yeah.
Which is a thing, because I don't know if you know the actor. He's quite big name casting. He played Punisher in the Punisher TV show and in Daredevil. So,
oh, wow.
It's quite big name casting for a character that didn't really stay around, isn't in the film too much. But going on for good casting again, Livia Soprano again, like the mannerisms and the way she speaks is like dead on.
The way she said, "Oh, poor you," was like, it was spot on.
So how do you like the it's not really a theory, but have you noticed how similar she looks to like Carmela?
Yeah, now she was in a TV show a few years ago called Bates Motel, And the poster for that, she looks identical to Carmela.
So-
Like, with the blonde hair, it's crazy.
Yeah, so, like, how do you like the theory that Tony's attraction to Carmela is, like, maternal?
Yeah, it would play into that a little bit, actually, yeah.
Yeah. I think
But
they...
I mean, that being said, the actress they picked for Carmela looks nothing like Edie Falco, so...
Yeah. It is weird, but, like... It's strange that they found another grown woman that looks like Eddie Falco.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people online were like... had to double take. I remember seeing on the Sopranos circle jerk. Basically, it was like, I had to double take. Was that Edie Falco? Like, no, it's not. It's not.
So that's all the good casting out the way. There's not a lot of bad casting in this film. People like, like Pussy, he didn't get a lot of scenes in this show, so his actor portrayed him fine.
Yes.
Paulie was portrayed very well, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly how I would imagine a young Paulie.
Yeah. Again, not many scenes, but of the three of them, the one that gets the most scenes is Silvio, and I think he's the worst casted.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that.
He does his walk very well.
I think he plays up the character a little bit too much.
Yeah, it's the voice and the mannerisms. It's a bit...
Yeah, definitely. He's more like, it's me, Silvio. Silvio didn't do that.
It feels like, Silvio's impression of, like, the Godfather lines and, like, Goodfellas lines and stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, it's actually happening to Silvio.
Yeah.
He nails the way Silvio walks.
Oh yeah, it's perfect, and all the hand movements are really good.
I don't know, like, we've discussed this off camera, but I'm a bit taken aback by how old Silvio actually is compared to Paulie.
I think it's just because Stevie Van Zandt is a lot older than he looks, quite frankly.
Maybe.
Because he's been around for a while and he looks fine.
The thing is, of the three of them, Paulie looked the youngest, which kind of took me aback a bit, because, like, I would have assumed, like, of the three of them, like, I would have assumed at least Pussy was, like, close to Tony's age.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I think it does put into perspective how old that cast actually is, considering that, like, Tony and Christopher were the two youngest members of that glorified crew.
To be fair, when I was watching it with my family, they said Tony didn't look good for a 40-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, when he puts on all the weight. In season 1, he looks, like, quite good, because he's still, like,
I was
thin.
shocked at how good he looks in season 1 when I went back and watched it.
He's quite thin in season 1. It's not until, like, season 2 where he starts putting on, like, a lot of weight, and then, like, come season 6, he's, like, huge.
Yeah.
But obviously a lot of that had to do with, apparently, the role was a bit much for him, which I don't know. I don't want to say, like, that role, like, affected him, like, his mental state or whatever. I'd never like to make that insinuation, but it seemed like he had trouble playing the role, and maybe that affected how much he was eating at the time.
It is a tough role, to be fair.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, an acting role can affect an actor. I don't think a lot of people think that, because a lot of people, they see these cameras on screen and they just see him as actors, but it's hard to, like, step back a bit and see him as people.
Yeah.
Especially with, like, all the good things people have said about James Gandolfini, like, as a person.
Yeah. I think because neither of us are actors, like, I don't think, and a lot of people I know have different methods towards acting, so maybe he just got way too into the character.
Yeah.
Like, started to affect him, but hey.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like, not to go into a tangent, but TV show acting definitely feels a lot more like classic acting, as in, like, the ones you are going to see be more, like, thespian, are going to be from TV shows and movies is more what you hire just to get like the big names on there.
Yeah, well, that is something that they actually brought up on the Talking Sopranos podcast, was actually that they see TV acting now how they saw movie acting like 40 years ago, where, you know, oh, TV acting is rubbish, movie acting's where you want to be, and now it's kind of like done this flip where like all the good stuff's on TV and all the kind of mediocre stuff is on cinema. Because I mean, like, you know, Many Saints of Newark kind of sticks out as one of the few like not Marvel inspired films out at the cinema at the moment.
Yeah, no, for sure. And
obviously not to, if you like that kind of thing, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you want like a thinking man's film, they're very far and few between these days. You tend to find it more on television than on cinema.
No, I agree. Not that like streaming, not that streaming services isn't trying to ruin television too.
No, of course. I meant more like just episodic stuff.
Yeah,
more in general.
No,
and also
sure.
not to say that Many Saints of Newark is a very like thinking man's film, because it's not. But like it's at least more trying to give a message, or like it's more than just, hey, bang bang, let's have a fight.
It feels more like the Many Saints of Newark just feels more like a film, like it just wants to be a movie, and that's kind of the start and end of it. It doesn't feel like it's trying to sell you something. Here's a film, like the good old days. You go cinema, you go watch a movie, you get a satisfying tale out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm gonna have a bad time pronouncing this.
Okay.
Alessandro Nivola played Dicky Moltisanti.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think he was the best actor in the film.
He was fantastic, I agree, yeah.
You know, him and, like...
Ray Liotta?
Yes, him and Ray Liotta, I think, were both really good.
Did you, like, laugh when Ray Liotta came on screen after he died?
Yeah, I did. I was sitting next to my sister, and I had to, like, explain that, like, okay, this is clearly, like, his brother, who's played by the same actor.
Like, was the thing just like, we got away with it in the show, we can do it again? Something
like that. I mean, I'm happy that... You know what, I'm happy, though, because I would have been really sad had Ray Liotta's, you know, scenes ended with the death of his first character.
Yeah, Hollywood dick.
Yeah. So, yeah, and, you know, enough about the casting. The setting of this film is obviously fantastic. It really captures the era, which was the 1960s going into the 70s, really well. A big theme going into this was, like, at the time, the racial tensions, which is captured very well in this film. Did you think like the like black movement subplot in this film like added a lot to it?
Yeah, I guess it actually did, because it kind of, although at one point the two kind of like storylines split apart, they came together at the very end for like a split second, and it made that difference.
Yeah,
it like, changed the whole story.
I was wondering where they were going with it.
Well, I guess it does kind of make sense. Like, that was the era that they grew up in, and like it was the start of the rise of like the popularization of criminal gangs in America.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, that's what led to all those 80s films.
I mean,
like that.
I mean, I did enjoy the character that was used to represent, I forget his name, but the character who was like basically the figurehead for the black movement that was working with the mafia at the beginning of the film. I did enjoy.
Harold.
Yeah, is that his name? I did enjoy his character a lot, and obviously it shows you the brutal side of, you know, the riots that were happening at the time, and I don't know how much I want to go into this, but this was filmed before the riots in real life just last year happened, so I don't know if it was like a timing thing or if Chase was inspired off real life events. But it was
Well,
there was definitely
if it was filmed before, then probably not.
yeah.
I assumed it was just always in the script because it plays a huge part of the story. It's not a small part of the story at all.
But remember, the Many Saints of Newark's been in development for quite a while.
That's true. Wasn't it supposed to come out October last year or something?
Yeah.
I remember it being like a 2020 date.
Yeah, September or October 2020, and then for some reason it got delayed like an entire year. But then that also happened with that James Bond film. Remember, me and you were in the cinema together watching a trailer for that film. I think when we went to
seeing?
I think it was the
Lighthouse, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Which, by the way, you should go back and listen to our episode on the Lighthouse. It's season 1, episode 4, and we talk for hours.
Yeah. It's a good watch, that Lighthouse film. But that James
that's a plug.
That's
a good plug.
that James Bond movie's not coming out till like now. And
I'm also not interested in it, to be
no,
honest,
for sure. But it's just interesting how like you think they're super far in filming, but then it gets pushed back so much.
Yeah, I assume it's probably like the last few action scenes that they needed to tie up.
So, The Many Saints of Newark chronicles the story of Dickie Moltisanti, which is the father of Christopher Moltisanti, the character who's narrating the entire film and is one of the major characters in The Sopranos. If you're watching this movie without watching The Sopranos, I personally wouldn't recommend just because of this, but if you're one for like not caring, it's okay. It does spoil at the beginning that Christopher Moltisanti is dead and was killed by the main character, Tony Soprano, of The Sopranos. And basically, in The Sopranos, they talk about Dickie quite a bit, but you never get like his backstory. You never actually see it. Usually in flashbacks, they never really showed Dickie Moltisanti either. So this is the first time you really see him, bar like maybe like a picture in the background of The Sopranos or something. So yeah, you basically get to see his story, and it starts with them, like he's meeting his dad, Ray Liotta's character, his first character, who's back from Italy with his new wife, who is quite the tragic character that we'll get into later. But yeah, so just like the setup for this movie, you said you knew about the Dickie Moltisanti stuff going in. Did you think that was a good thing to base this movie around? Like, was that an interesting part? Because it's never been explored in Sopranos lore before.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's actually a part that, because Dickie died before Christopher was really old enough to remember him.
Yeah,
it's we had that. There was that scene where Tony was like, he's the guy that killed your father.
Yeah.
It's the policeman in there. And like, obviously you kind of half knew that Tony was bullshitting.
Yeah.
But like, now we know it wasn't at all. He was just hit on the, it's a good, I nearly gave away the ending there.
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll talk about it.
I think it is. It's a really interesting story, because I think what people tend to forget is that in season 1 of The Sopranos, the Mayo crime family was basically like 4 or 5 like separate gangs that kind of didn't like each other but were part of one family. And this kind of goes more into that, even though it was set a long time before. Like Dickie Moltisanti, well, he's in the DeMeo crime family, but he's doing something completely separate to Junior.
Yeah. No, yeah, sure.
So it's good. It gives you that perspective of like what was going on before Tony was really old enough to know what was going on.
Yeah, and you see a lot of it through Tony's eyes too. Obviously not too much, where it's kind of like they remake the scene from Sopranos season 1, I want to say, where his dad gets arrested at the fun fair.
Yeah.
And
it's a little bit different how it played out in the show.
Yeah. So you get a lot of insight there on Dickie Moltisanti, who he is, and it turns out that Dickie Moltisanti was very well liked kind of by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have many flaws from when you looked at him from the outside. he seemed cool-headed. Everyone always listened to him. They make a point that Livia Soprano listens more to Dickie Moltisanti than her own husband. And
same for Tony as well.
Yeah, same with Tony as well. Which is very interesting. So, like, he'd always been seen as, like, this quite great figure. But, like, obviously deep down, you know, the things he's not telling anyone is he's actually quite a troubled character. Early on in the film, his dad is abusing his Italian wife, and Dickie Moltisanti gets in a little scuffle with him and then just kills his dad, beats him to death.
And that scene actually really surprised me.
Yeah.
I was genuinely shocked when that happened. Just because, like, obviously, don't believe everything in the trailer, but the trailers only show Ray Liotta in prison. So when he killed his dad, I was like, whoa, what?
Yeah. No, it's the trailers for Many Saints of Newark were good because it was one of the few like times they didn't just give away the entire movie.
It was borderline misleading though, like not in a bad way, but like no story beat is actually hit on in those trailers.
No,
it's
yeah,
crazy.
for sure. So yeah, like we find out that Dickie Moltisanti is quite a troubled character, but he doesn't tell anyone about it. You would say that, is that kind of like Tony Soprano in the show? Not really, because I think everyone kind of knows that Tony Soprano has like these big faults. Like he's quick to anger, he's quick to, he's got all these issues with people. He's not always like, he's very charismatic, but he's very violent and he's very this and this. Whereas like Dickie Moltisanti, by everyone, is kind of seen as like a man's man. In a way, kind of like the man Tony always goes on about in his therapy sessions, the actor.
Oh no. Oh.
I don't like to
not Gary Cooper.
It's
Gary Cooper.
Dare I say Dickie Moltisanti is portrayed as the Gary Cooper type. Yeah, I think that's why. I think Tony got his admiration of like that kind of man from Dickie Moltisanti. I think it kind of like, now you see it and you kind of see like why he looks up to him. He's well respected in his craft, and this was at a time the mafia was thriving. Like when Tony Soprano's in charge of the mafia, those are like the low years of the mafia.
Yeah.
But
well, we'll get more into it when we do our Sopranos podcast proper. But like I've heard those theories where it's like people specifically were trying their hardest to make sure Tony did not get to be the head of that family.
Yeah. Meanwhile, like Dickie is like, he's well respected. He's quite the in a time where it was, being respected as the head of the mafia meant something, or the head of. Obviously he wasn't the boss of the family, was he, at the time? It was the boss of the family at the time.
I see. He must have been. No, it was DeMeo. DeMeo was still. That family was still the boss. Not that I don't think you actually get to see them though.
No. So yeah. If you know anything,
he was just like a really high up capo, I think, was it?
If you know anything about like David Chase and the way he writes The Sopranos, is he clearly likes writing these alpha male types with issues. He clearly really likes making them like super insecure and all that. And it's the same thing here. If you've watched The Sopranos, then you know that Dickie Moltisanti, despite his tough facade, is going to have a lot of issues. And like, even though he's portrayed as nice and good, he has proper bad anger issues, and like he not only does he kill his dad, but later on when he finds out his Italian wife cheats on him, he kills her too. He drowns her. It's one of the most horrible. Yes, I forgot that he didn't like marry her because he was still. I was actually thinking, I'm like, oh, did he leave her to marry the other woman? And I was like, oh no, wait! But then the car scene happens, and you see he's still with his wife.
Yes, yeah, they were still together.
So yeah, he drowns her, and probably the most horrifying scene in the. It's very like slow and deliberate, and they clearly film it where she's like fighting for her life. It's not an easy scene to watch.
No, it's very well shot.
Yeah, I agree.
Up until like the weird like CGI ending where he's like walking off, but like the rest of it was fine.
Yeah, what was that about?
Okay, there's two really like weird uses of CGI in this film. I'm just both of them are really like they're not good, and I'm just like, huh? But it didn't take me out of the film at all. So
yeah, so
it was specifically the fire scene I'm thinking of, where just like that fire was just not good fire.
Yeah, sure.
He walks away from the explosion and he's just like.
I made a joke about when I was in the cinema where I was like, you know, the scene where Tony's watching the fire.
Yeah.
Which I think is a bit. I just don't like that scene. I think early on they were trying too hard to be like the Tony saw everything important. Like I think it kind of. I was like, all right, enough of this. He
kind of doesn't though. He doesn't see everything important.
I mean, I guess it's just because like he stumbles upon Dickie Moltisanti after he's killed his dad in the garage, which I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. But for some reason, that scene where he's looking outside at the fire, I don't know. For some reason, I just didn't like it.
Sure. But I mean, he lived in Newark, though. He didn't live that far away, and we knew that, so...
Yeah, sure. Well, anyway, I said something... I was talking to my sister, and I was like... this is where he got the idea to burn Artie's fucking restaurant. Who also makes a cameo in this movie. Young Artie's in this movie.
Such a brief, like, because we knew that they were like childhood best friends, so I assumed that he'd be in the film more, but he's only in one scene, which is really surprising. You don't even see Vesuvio's either.
Is a young Jackie in this film?
Yeah, there's a young Jackie in this film as well. Again, he's not in it for long.
And is it a kid? Is it like Tony's age?
Yeah, I think they're the same age, yeah.
Yeah, so very interesting how that played out. Obviously, if they want to do more Sopranos prequels, and, you know, if David Chase is listening to this, please do more Sopranos prequels. I'd like to see a chapter of the story focusing on Jackie's time as boss.
Yeah, definitely.
But
we may never get it.
Yeah, I mean... David Chase said he is open to making a sequel to the Many Saints of Newark, and with how the film ends, there's a lot of stuff still to explore, I would say.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's
about 20 years to explore, actually, so...
I don't know if like he'd opt for a movie or if he'd go back maybe to a show format for that.
I could see an anthology instead, where it's, you know, just like 10 episodes or whatever, of just different points of history.
Look, if Breaking Bad can get Better Call Saul, we can get the Little Sopranos adventures.
But is that what you want it to be called?
Yeah.
Wait, can we call it The Real Sopranos? There we go.
Yeah.
You know, The Real Ghostbusters.
This is what they're actually like. This is all the stuff you haven't seen. I mean, you could argue that you could get into the problem of like
Behind the Sopranos.
Yeah. You could argue you could get into the problem of trying to answer too many questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, this movie only really answers one or two, which is good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've talked a lot about Dickie Moltisanti as a character, and I find him very interesting. I think he's one of the strongest Sopranos verse characters, and that's saying a lot considering his relatively overall short contribution to the entire lore. But he fits the series, the Sopranos series well. Obviously, you have that humor in there. I found his insecurities very interesting. And like, you think, you know, after he kills his dad, it's a mafioso film, right? So a lot of people are like, whatever, he's gonna be cool and go off, but like a real human being, killing his dad sticks with him for that his entire life, and like he has to like visit his dad's brother just to feel a bit better about what he did.
Yeah, and like even his dad's brother is just like, why are you even here?
Okay, do you think
Out of here.
do you think he knew that he killed him?
Definitely.
Yeah, because my sister said this as well. He's asking all the questions because he's like, oh yeah, that's weird. My brother never really did any work like that. Why would he be in a warehouse or wherever he died?
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is, Diggy Moltisanti just never gives him like a good answer.
Yeah, every answer he gives is just like, anyway.
And even when he kills his Gumar, it's like, I feel like he still knows it was him who did it.
Yeah, because he goes, wow, so much tragedy in your life, wow.
He plays that character so well, like, it borders on, like, comedic, but in, like, a good way. Because he's so, like, deadpan.
Yeah, it's like zero, like, he just does not care.
Plus, that's like the Ray Liotta voice I know, because with his first character, his dad, he's got, the typical accent that they all have. But, like, his second character, it just sounds like Ray Liotta, like Goodfellas Ray Liotta. And, like, it fits really well.
I want to say they put some, like, makeup on his face when he was doing Hollywood Dick. Because, like, he looked older as Hollywood Dick as he did as his brother. Yeah,
sure. But he might be my favourite character in the movie.
Sure, yeah, I will not argue against that one.
Yeah. It's just funny how much he clearly knew, and I don't know if you want to say they act as a parallel to, like, the therapy scenes from The Sopranos. It feels...
I can see that.
It feels like kind of like a twisted version. Like, instead of, like, Dr. Melfi trying to give, like... Like, they're both... At the end of the day, Dr. Melfi and this brother character are both trying to give him, like, honest advice. But the way they go about it is, like, very different. Because, like, this character's just like, you're a bad person. And in the end, one of the things he tells him is, stay out of... If you want Tony Soprano to have a good life growing up, stay out of his life.
Mm-hmm. And then one of the last things he says is, what do I know? I'm a murderer. Like, he's conscious that he's like, that this might not be good advice either.
Yeah. He's an interesting character because he's one of the few... He's just, like, so content with where he is in life. He's like, yeah, I'm in jail. This is where I belong. Because I murdered a maid guy. Mm-hmm. That's just how it is. He's a very interesting character. We probably will never see more of him again, even if they do make a sequel.
Yeah, it's a shame, but, like, I think if they were to do something with him, it would be a bit arse-pully, so it's fine. Fine.
So, I guess... Let's talk about the only other thing I really have left to talk about before the ending, which I'll go into, because there's a lot to unpack with that. I find Tony Soprano's character in this movie very interesting because he's clearly meant to be a parallel to his own son, AJ.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing all the bad things that AJ got called out for by Tony and Carmela.
Tony Soprano, hypocrite ?
Yeah, no, it's proper. It's a good watch for sure. But, like, I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like, Tony Soprano was always a hypocrite, so I guess this isn't surprising. But I guess for some reason, besides, like, one line in season 5 where, like, Tony wants to excuse AJ for shaving off his eyebrows because he's like, hey, we messed around with stuff like that at his age. I guess for some reason I just didn't think they were going to be, like, the most wild characters, but turns out they were. Considering
what's different about you?
Considering how, like, he grows up and he's quite strict in the house, I'm shocked that, like, he would have the background he did.
Well, that's another thing as well. It's like, Janice is smoking weed, and his whole thing is just like, I'm not Janice. It's not even like, oh, weed's bad or whatever. He's just like, yeah, I don't do it.
Yeah.
Even though he probably is.
Yeah, I mean, he snorted cocaine in the show.
Multiple times, yeah.
Oh, his thing is like, he doesn't mind you doing drugs so long as you're not addicted. Doing drugs you can do. You just gotta space out.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tony Soprano's character is very interesting in this because his relationship with Livia is explored a bit. There's the scene where they almost have what seems like the first kind of touching moment between them, where the mum gets dragged into the principal's office and she's talking about how Tony spoke highly of like the time he had with her.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the only time I can think of where like they had like kind of like a close moment, because that makes her cry too. Obviously you don't know if it's with Livia, you don't know why she's crying, because she cries like 3 different times in this movie.
Yeah.
One of which isn't at like the funerals, which is weird.
Yeah.
But she cries at, when her husband gets arrested, and he like rolls his eyes at like her crying, because I think he knows that she's very dramatic as a person.
Yeah.
But the so Tony's relationship with her is explored just a bit more. There's a scene where he makes her a burger, and it seems like, oh, they're having a nice mother-son moment, and then immediately it backfires, and it's like, oh, you're smoking weed, blah blah blah. And it's like, fucking hell, we couldn't have like one good moment between them for too long.
Exactly.
I guess nothing really changes.
Yeah. The more things change, the more they say the same kind of a thing.
Yeah. And I think that like I would love to see more Livia in this setting, because I think she is one of the highlights of the movie. Same with Tony and Dickie, and obviously Ray Liotta's characters. So it's just interesting how much they like give kind of like a new perspective with Tony. He's not like the mafia boss that he is in the show, where he's like beating the crap out of everyone. Now he's like, he's got more vulnerability to him because he's a kid. He's reaching out to Dickie Moltisanti to like, he wants his mum to take meds because she'll feel better. And that plays into the whole like, not only does Tony take meds to feel better for himself, but also it plays into the whole like Livia's opinion on therapy and medication.
Yeah, exactly.
She thinks it's just for weak people, and that's why she...
Little did she know that he was getting those medicines for her. Ooh,
yeah,
not for him.
Yeah,
wow.
exactly. But that's the thing, because like she makes a comment at the end of the film when, a certain character dies and those meds are on him, that she's like, oh, I always thought he was strong.
Mm-hmm.
Until I saw the meds on him. It's like, what a horrible thing to say. She definitely has, like, to be fair, the thing is, a lot of people, more than you think from that time period, are just like that, where they're like, therapy, you must be weak. And it's just like, alright, well, that's just horrible. And it's
exactly.
And Livia Soprano obviously has something wrong with her mentally. Like, she's a narcissist for sure. So,
oh yeah,
it's just interesting. And obviously I liked seeing Tony reach out to Dickie to try and help her. You had that little subplot and it was all good. But yeah, I think I'm done talking about pre-ending spoilers. I don't know if there's anything you want to bring up about the movie before we start talking about the ending.
No, I think it's just honestly, it's just the way the film like portrays these characters the way the series of events sets up, nothing like comes as a huge surprise to me. Everything feels natural. What I mean, I should probably elaborate on what I mean by nothing comes as a huge surprise. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing, because it's not like, oh, whoa, where did this come from? It's like, yeah, I can see that character doing that. Yeah, I could see that character doing that. Like, it's not like there's no dramatic twist in the story that makes me go, whoa.
Well, yeah, when you're
it's just kind of like,
when you're doing a prequel, you want everyone to act in character.
exactly, yeah. And I think the story was exactly how I would have wanted it to be. Actually, it's a very kind of down to earth. Here's what the mafia was doing these days,
And that's reflects on the Sopranos. Like,
yeah.
Sopranos doesn't glorify the mafia, and neither does Many Saints of Newark. It doesn't glorify the mafia. It tells you being in the mafia is quite exhausting.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were probably mentally drained.
Mm.
So, obviously,
Oh yeah.
obviously there's a lot of movies like that. Like, you know, Goodfellas didn't really glorify them. It did at first, but that was kind of the point, where it was kind of like, hey, look how good the life was, now look how far he's fallen, kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of.
So obviously you've had films like that, but like, you also get like these badass mafia flicks, which is like, I've been shootouts everywhere, which is just not what The Sopranos is. And this movie had one or two, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, which is probably like collectively the same amount of action scenes in the entirety of The Sopranos.
Yeah.
I guess Sopranos is more like fist fights, like when Tony and Ralphie fight. That's a really good fight. I like that fight a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're just scurrying
And it's
around the
over
kitchen
very quickly.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about the ending. So after he kills his Gumar, he kind of, that's like the low point for him, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if you want to say, I don't know if that's because he truly loved her and he didn't want to kill her. I don't know if that was the reason. I don't know if it's just because like this life was getting too stressful for him after he killed his dad, you know, and that was getting up to him. But like basically all these things are building up Dicky Moltisanti. He's in kind of a low place at the end, isn't he?
Yes, definitely.
So he gets the advice to stay away from Tony, and Tony, he tries to talk.
Does?
Yeah, he tries to talk to Dicky Moltisanti, but Dicky Moltisanti's purposely staying away from him, and he's purposely trying to distance himself from him. So like, you know, Tony has a fit and he starts throwing like amplifiers that were given to him by Dicky out the window, proper crying about it. Which is a good scene because his dad comes back like from walking the dog and he's just like, what the hell is going on? So earlier in the movie, we've neglected to talk about like Uncle Junior's character in this film, because he's in more scenes than you think he would be.
He said the classic line.
Yeah.
He said the classic line.
When he said the Veracity Athlete line, everyone in my cinema laughed. It actually did feel like, you know, like the Family Guy joke where it's like, oh, I'm going to say the title of the movie in the movie. And Peter's just like, ah. It's like, it was like that. It was like at that moment. But good. If overall, I wouldn't say this movie has too many wink, get it, you're a fan of The Sopranos moments. None that bothered me.
I think most of them come from Junior, actually.
Yeah, true.
Because he says, sisters, you know.
Yeah. So he falls over and he hurts his back pretty bad, doesn't he?
Mm.
And you know, Dicky, he proper laughs at him, and I guess Uncle Junior took that as like a very personal insult. And by the way, Uncle Junior, he sleeps with Livia in one scene, right? Or is that a different
See,
woman?
I don't think it was Livia, but the actor looked very similar.
Yeah, I don't know if that was or wasn't Livia, and that was like them confirming the fact that Livia had affairs with Junior Soprano, which would make sense considering how
Oh,
much.
it would make sense.
How
Maybe
much?
it was Livia then.
I mean, I'd need to rewatch the movie, but yeah. Anyway, he's complaining about his back,
Mm.
right? And then at the
Mm.
end of the movie, it turns out that he's the one that got Dicky Moltisanti killed.
Yeah, which
It's in character.
yeah, and it's kind of now obviously that leads back into the Sopranos TV show, but like because Tony seems unaware that it was Junior who did it.
Oh yeah.
So,
To be fair, it couldn't trace back to him.
that is true.
But it makes sense because you watch The Sopranos and you go, he wants to kill Tony about the joke about him eating women out.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like, what an overreaction. And you watch this movie, it turns out he killed a man just for laughing at him for falling over.
Yeah, and like it was a good it was like a good faith laugh. No one else was around to see it. Like it wasn't like, hey, look at this idiot. Haha.
Yeah. And also, obviously he was smart to hire somebody to do it for him. And, back then it was probably harder to trace stuff like that. So he gets away with it, scot-free, and he takes it to, I guess, his grave. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting how they went that direction. I had no idea. I don't know if David Chase really planned it ahead of time, but it fits perfectly. If you look up theories on who killed Junior, there's some people who think the police officer did it, but I think the majority of people think Tony was lying about that.
Do you mean Dickie?
Or the police officer who killed Dickie, I mean.
Yeah.
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 But everyone thinks, I think the majority of people thinks that Tony was lying to Christopher about that, the police officer murderer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I think at the time, like I commented on it, like no way.
But
He was just a random guy.
another popular theory I ran into was actually Johnny Boy was the murderer, Tony's dad.
Yeah. Now considering like how they were technically rivals, I'd see that. I would 100% see that. But also at the time, Junior kind of was still like acting capo for like what's his name, Johnny Boy Soprano, because yeah, Johnny Boy was back, but it was Junior really running the show.
Yeah.
So you could argue that if Johnny Boy was more active in his role, then maybe it would have been Johnny Boy who killed him.
Maybe. But I don't know what people are going to think about the ending, but I just love that it's so in character for him to kill Dickie over that.
Yeah, definitely. That is very Junior move. Like, it's like I was saying, like nothing in this film like surprised me in terms of like a character. That character wouldn't do that. Like, yeah, of course Junior would kill someone because he laughed at them. That's a very Junior thing to do.
It was either going to be the only two people that would kill him for pay reasons, I would feel, would be Junior or Livia. So
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting, and now we have the answer on how Dicky Moltisanti died, and I found it very satisfying.
Absolutely.
The movie wraps up
Same.
well with like Tony visiting the funeral, and obviously Livia thinking that Dicky Moltisanti was basically a weak man.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tony,
we can't forget the best part of the film, okay, where Tony's staring at Dicky Moltisanti. And then the Soprano theme starts playing, and everyone was like, "Yes,
yes, yeah, that was pretty good." But I guess Dicky Moltisanti dying is what convinced him to join the mafia. Is that what we're going with?
Well, it was, yeah, I guess so.
You think if something would put you off the mafia is your favourite person getting shot at the back of the head?
Well, he also did the pinky promise at the end, where it's like, because he originally did it to be like, I'm gonna stay out of trouble, and like joining the mafia is the complete opposite of that.
Yeah, and then Dickie briefly came back to life at the end to do the pinky promise with him.
And Tony went, what the fuck?
It's a scary scene. No, but it's I thought this movie was great. I thought it was fantastic.
I agree.
Put those nice fancy graphics up. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
Wow, do you want like an explosion sound effect when they appear?
Yeah. You can barely hear what I'm saying. There's so many effects.
Yeah, I'll bass boost it really loud too.
do you want to slap a score on this?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm also going to give it an 8 out of 10.
I mean, this was quite a concise podcast. Not as many funny moments, but definitely one of a great start to season 3.
Wow, I'm tooting your own horn there.
I mean, Dreary Middle podcast is like the best podcast out there. Even if it's not true, you gotta believe it. That's how you do well in these things. So,
you heard it here first, folks. Mr. Turnabout's Dreary Middle : the podcast, #1 on iTunes.
Yeah, and that's also, season 3, the start. We have the rebranded names. We have like the rebrand, Dreary Middles. Season 3. We've got a lot of episodes planned, and I think you'll like them. But
yes.
Do you...
here's a here's a sneaky peek for next time. We're going sailing on the 7 seas. That's so generic. Like you're never gonna guess what it is.
Finally, Pirates of the Caribbean. Do you want?
That line's okay. It's a decent line, I'd say.
Do you have any final thoughts on the Many Saints of Newark you want to talk about, or do you want to just wrap the podcast
Just
up?
see the film.
Go support the movie. I don't know how well Many Saints of Newark's going to do, but you owe it to yourself to go support the film.
So, basically, if you don't go and see it, you hate good cinema.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that.
I said it. It's only 2 hours of your time.
Yeah.
What else are you going to be doing for 2 hours, huh?
At the end of the day, you're going to get a sad...
I'm helping children do their ABCs. Boring.
Yeah. I feel like... The thing is, I feel like this film is going to be lost on a lot of people. Just... Not that they don't get it, but like... I think a lot of people want like proper like mafioso kind of film, and they're going to sit down and they're going to see a movie with a lot of people... families talking to each other about really pointless stuff.
Now, okay, we will go more into this if we ever do a Sopranos podcast, but I don't think that matters. I think Sopranos has permeated like pop culture enough to the point where I think people know what it's about, even if they don't know what it's about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it seems like all the criticism for the Sopranos direction was more at the time than in hindsight, just because of like the legacy of the show.
But then again, like looking at the reviews for this film, it's not as high as I was expecting it to be.
No,
I think a lot of people were disappointed at how this film turned out in terms of not necessarily the acting or the story, but more about how vague it was in places. And underwhelming is a word I kept seeing coming up. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's very much like you will like this if you like films that are just basically, here's something that happened.
I mean, I just don't know I don't know what people wanted from a Sopranos prequel.
No, same.
I guess more Tony, I guess, is the easy answer.
Yeah, but this isn't a film about Tony, so I don't. That's not a complaint for me.
Yeah. No, same.
If you can't read the description of the film, then what are you doing?
Set your expectations right. Don't expect Tony Soprano to have a lot of screen time. I said that to my sister before we went in. I was like, I know this is a prequel, but just don't expect much Tony Soprano. Her
He was on
expectations were
screen for
set.
like 15 minutes max.
Yeah, no. All his scenes are great, but at the end of the
Mhm.
day, this movie has quite a big cast. So a lot of screen time is dedicated to all these different characters. Dicky Moltisanti getting the most, and thankfully Dicky Moltisanti was a very interesting character to carry the film. I guess that's just my final thoughts on the film. I do wish it would receive a bit higher, critically speaking. And I don't know how many people are going to see it. My cinema wasn't full. And I don't know if that's because...
neither was mine.
The thing is, I don't know if that's because of we're technically still in the pandemic era or what. So I don't know how much you can blame on that.
I just think maybe it's because it's not so big. The Sopranos isn't that huge over here.
No, it's unfortunate.
Like, it's big, but it's not big.
I mean, I'm glad the people who went still laughed at the famous Veracity athlete line.
I did.
I did too. I expected to groan if that line made the film, but it ended up making me laugh.
I think it's because it comes at a point that you're not expecting it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. That's it for now.
Yeah.
What a good film. So
yeah, let's log off.
If you've got some opinions of your own, drop them in the comments below. If you're listening on YouTube, if you're listening on iTunes or Pocket Casts or Google Podcasts or Spotify or whatever's not iTunes, then I would encourage you to just head on over to our website. There'll be a link in the show notes. Leave a comment on there. You can leave a comment on social media too. We're on Twitter at Dreary Middle, exactly how it's spelled. Or you can always drop us a line, podcast@drearymiddle.com. We've had quite a few emails. We read them, and then we think your opinion is trash. Delete them.
We have a Discord server now where you can join and you can criticize us and tell us why we were wrong about our top 5 Simpsons episodes.
Yeah, specifically our number 2s, which were critically acclaimed episodes that in quite a few people's top 10s list, if I remember correctly.
Look, most people...
But if you want to disagree with us...
Yeah. Most people would be ashamed and hide that behind a Patreon wall. Listen, we're giving you the Discord for free. Until
this is turning into an assault on our fans.
until we have enough people to get a Patreon funding.
So are you saying we're in this 100% for the money?
Yeah, I mean, hey man, those pennies don't come in fast enough. That's all I'm saying. But we've plugged Discord, we've plugged everything. Obviously, if you're on YouTube, do the things the algorithm likes.
Yes, comment, rate, subscribe, click the bell, hit all.
And share.
Is that all the beats?
Share the video.
Oh, just share it with your friends.
Honestly, I know we
family.
do better on stuff that isn't YouTube, but seriously, if you like this, if you're watching this on YouTube, share it around. We could use all the support we get.
Yeah, it's obviously not to go too crazy with this, but podcasts are in a really weird spot at the moment. And like if you enjoyed it, we really would like feedback.
Yeah.
It's really weird that we can see that quite a few people are listening, but it's weird that just because of how podcasts work, it's really hard for people to get engagement. So just we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
This isn't a give us validation. It's just if you enjoyed it, just tell us. We'd love to hear what your opinions are.
Can we improve? I don't know. We won't know unless you reach out to us.
Exactly. And if you know where we live, please stay away.
Yeah.